Did you hear the answer about Monroe Street?
I missed it.
All right.
I heard the very tail end, but I missed the explanation.
They put the whole packet in from the original request.
Oh, okay.
Anything with just Monroe Street, but it was just all the material from the original.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
All right, we are live.
All right, thank you, Larry. Good evening, everyone. The time is now 7:02. I'm going to call the the Public Works Committee to order. I'll start off by taking roll. Mr. Livingston?
Here.
Mr. Langella?
Here.
Mr. Keegan?
Here.
Mrs. Smith?
Here.
Mrs. Young?
Here.
And I myself am here. Mr. Theodorides will not be joining us tonight. Okay. Larry, do we have anybody for public input?
Yes, we have one person. Okay. Diane, go ahead.
Good evening, Diane.
Hey, good evening and Happy New Year, all of you. It's a whole new year with some positive changes in our city. And I just wanted to speak with you tonight about several items on the agenda very briefly, and I appreciate the opportunity. The first one is I reviewed the minutes from last month, and I thank Tom Livingston for asking questions about the possibility of electric vehicles and hybrids for the one request. I do know that we are working towards adding vehicles to the fleet. However, I just would suggest that this committee, this particular committee and the council itself just request across the board for every department, every agency, that we look at how to build out the electric charging station infrastructure. There will be monies and grants available. There have been in the past to add so that we can actually not use as many gas-powered and diesel-powered SUVs and light trucks. Other towns are doing it. So I just ask that you consider setting across the board policy, make sure that the purchasing department understands this and have it come from the mayor's office, and then staff will be directed as such. The next item, I just had a quick question that I would love to see answered during this fine meeting, and that is on number 2, the walk bridge easement offers around, I guess, related to compensatory easements. I just wanted to know if in the review of what amount of money would be fair and paid to the city, whether there were any scientists involved or biologists, because there is a specialty called ecosystem service values that have been utilized in evaluating when wetlands and forest lands and tidal wetlands in this case are taken out of service. They provide value that can be quantified. There was a woman by the name of Denise Savageau that I will send to Anthony and others and Alexis, because she is an environmental economist. She used to be, for many years, the Greenwich Conservation Commission director. And ecosystem service value of the tidal wetlands in this particular item, I think might bear additional valuation for in the favor of the city. And I did not know if the Shellfish Commission and the Harbor Commission were asked to help you provide that kind of evaluation. So I just wanted to know if that has been included. I'm just not aware that Leisha King and others involved in this process have that kind of knowledge. And I'm not saying I would expect them to, but I also would expect them to find someone to help us. Just 2 more and very quickly. Number 6, the hazardous waste clean harbors contract. Of course, as some of you know, and this is for Anthony's benefit, I was the person when I was a member of the League of Women Voters that created and initiated the Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day when I was a much younger woman in the 80s and when Bill Collins was the mayor. And I'm very pleased that this has become a fabric of the city. It helps reduce fires and poisonings in homes, etc. What I do feel is needed, though, is that there be a much more aggressive way of advertising this and advertising the paint care program, because then you'll pull out some of the cost of holding a fixed household hazardous waste collection day system, because the paint care program, which there was a very nice poster that was in your packet, allows people to drop it off at various paint stores, and not a lot of people know about this. So without any kind of creative outreach and advertising, the city is taking on more cost than they should. And the whole point of the League of Women Voters and my helping the city with this so many years ago was one day that we will always need to have some place to put some of the toxins we put in we buy, but that with some education, we would purchase less toxic materials, therefore reducing the high cost of this particular collection day. So if anyone would like to mention or discuss that, even offline, the lack of educational materials, I think makes a difference and costs the city more when we do not have educational materials. And lastly, on number 7, the yard waste, I may have, I was trying to find the actual contract with city carting for the yard waste hauling, and I could not find it. I don't think it was in the packet unless it was, I may have skipped over it. But I just wanted to say, as the coordinator for the Norwalk Zero Waste Coalition, we would be against the current process for taking yard waste, because we fully would expect to have a detailed discussion. And unfortunately, the whole year went by. A lot of us were stuck in our homes, where we could have had a discussion about reducing the cost of hauling the yard waste. And how do we reduce the yard waste? By number 1, educating the public about some people that could have backyard composting. Also, there is, to my knowledge, no return of any of the composted material back to the citizens or our parks. So I look forward to the discussion at number 7, but because I could not find a document in the packet that was given to you, I asked that this item be tabled until there could be a little more information about city carting taking yet another waste stream away. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Larry, is there anybody else?
There is not.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no one else, I'll close public input and move on to the agenda for tonight. Item number 1, approve the minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting of Tuesday, December 1, 2020. Would anybody like to move that item? Somebody I can't see everyone, so just please.
Yeah, I'll move it.
Thank you, Tom. All in favor? I'm gonna change my
Aye.
switch. See everybody. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Seems unanimous. Any abstentions? Okay, passes unanimously. Item number 2, reauthorize the conveyance of compensatory and mitigation easement to the state of Connecticut concerning 185 Liberty Square and 15 and 60 South Smith Street, item 7C 2 and 3 on the September 22nd, 2020 Common Council agenda as permanent easements. Would anybody like to move this item? Thank you, Barbara. And I believe we have Darren with us tonight, who can explain this in a little bit more detail. Darren?
Sure. So you'll all probably remember I was before you maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago, regarding 3 easements. 2 of them are the topic of tonight at 15 and 16 South Smith Street and 185 Liberty Square. Those are the compensatory easements. The third easement, which is unrelated to what's on the agenda tonight, is the ingress and egress construction easement at 30 Monroe. So when I originally came before you, I had a memorandum that I provided in the backup, and I explained in there that the DOT was requesting permanent compensatory easements, mitigation easements. And we had a discussion about whether these should be permanent or temporary. And I explained that I really never got an explanation of the necessity for permanent versus temporary, but it was DOT's position that they needed to be permanent. And after that discussion, it was approved conditioned upon them being temporary easements. After it went through the Common Council approval process, I submitted a draft easement for DOT to review. There was some exchanges in email, and ultimately I spoke with some folks at DOT at the higher echelon of the agency, who again reaffirmed that their position was they needed to be permanent easements. I really didn't get much more of an explanation as to why, but it was clear at that point that the course that the DOT intends to follow is eminent domain if we can't resolve it. So I wanted to put this back before the committee to at least have an opportunity to reconsider the approval. Unfortunately, I don't have much more to add as to the reason for DOT's position.
I believe, may I just add one thing? Sorry, Tom. It's just that I believe that also as part of their permitting, they need to keep that as a permanent easement because they will be really required to maintain that wetlands forever, pretty much. So they don't want that later on that can change and go to other hands, and then they were not going to be able to maintain their wetlands.
And Vanessa, I know Tom had a question. Actually, Tom, you go first.
I was just going to say, we really doesn't seem like we have much choice here, right? I mean, either we approve it or they do it anyway. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, yeah, I think so. Ultimately, you know, the state has the power of eminent domain. That process is a bifurcated process. It allows the party asserting eminent domain, in this case, the state, to acquire title and rather quickly at the inception of the litigation. And then really it becomes an argument of, you know, regarding valuation.
Yeah.
So
I'm just sorry, Darren. It just seems to me. I mean, I really like to understand more about the why of this. I understand they didn't tell you much, but it makes it harder, right, for us.
I understand.
So Tom, the way that I got the explanation was that as part of their permitting, they have to also maintain some wetlands as their kind of remediation process. And they have to maintain that for pretty much forever. So that's why that easement has to be permanent.
But aren't there two? I'm sorry, Vanessa. Aren't there two easements that we're talking about?
This is the wetland
But there are two.
easement. That's the one that is on South Smith Street. So
Yeah.
it's just that kind of really that little area that they need to keep that wetland. What they're gonna do is that on those two areas, they have to go there. They have to plant some tidal wetlands that was already approved by the conservation and DEP and all that. But also part of the easement is that they really need to maintain that for a long term. And that's why the easement has to be permanent, so they can continue to maintain that. I believe that one of the questions that we had is that maybe in the past we thought, what about if this is kind of a prime spot for the city because it's near the water? What about in the future if we want to switch hands? But what they're saying is that, no, we really need to keep that as wetlands as part of the permitting for the bridge, you know, because what happened is that usually when there is some disturbance, they have to also add more wetlands to it. And those are the kind of the areas. There are a few areas that they are doing that. And this too is where they need the permanent easement because they need access to be able to maintain that.
Okay, so Vanessa, is that both of these easements or just one of them?
Is the three of them.
No, but I thought right now we're being asked to reapprove two of them.
No,
three.
it's three. It's one.
All three?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's why we put the three of them back.
I
It's
thought
a
one of
three.
them, one of them, we gave them what they wanted.
Yes,
The other-
Monroe Street, that
Monroe
was
Street.
the access for the South Norwalk train station.
But the other two, we said, we put this condition on, it didn't work apparently. But
Correct.
are you saying that both of those you think are required for the wetland
For the
maintenance?
permitting, yes, it's all wetland related to this. If you
Okay.
look at your package, you're gonna see. So it's not that they're gonna build anything on that. And just to clarify what was brought into the beginning of this meeting as a comment, the reason why they're taking the easement is really to maintain the wetland.
All right, I'm sorry,
And-
just one more question and then I won't monopolize time. You said, Vanessa, that's in the easement agreements, their agreement to maintain it?
On their permit, for them to be able to permit the work for the bridges, they need to do this wetland mitigation.
And maintain it, you said.
Correct,
Okay, thank you.
forever.
Vanessa, can you just clarify too for the committee that, and I think that you alluded to this earlier, was that as part of the wetland mitigation, it's tied into the walk bridge program, right, under the permit, but they're not actually disturbing those wetlands, right, or damaging the wetlands. They're actually, the only disturbance to the wetlands is to mitigate the wetlands and improve the wetlands.
They're actually improving the wetlands.
Right.
Those are areas that some time ago, conservation also got involved, and we were able to identify some areas where we could improve the wetlands. So there was a lot of back and forth between conservation and DOT, where they had to be able to locate some areas where they have to improve the wetlands. And those are the areas that kind of between conservation and them came up to an agreement. I did a walkthrough probably over a year ago to those areas with conservation and with DOT, that we were all in agreement that those were the areas that we use for mitigation. The only change to this is that unfortunately those areas has to be now a permanent easement because they need to maintain that permanently.
And
Right, so
Vanessa,
there's no, Mr. Chairman and committee, so there's no disturbance to the wetlands. This is an improvement above and beyond what's existing.
Correct.
And just to clarify, it's solely the wetlands, the part that's exposed during low tide, correct?
Yes, the only thing what happened is that the reason for the easement is that they need access through our property also to access that wetland mitigation as well.
Are there any other questions? All right, well then I'll put it to a vote. All in favor? Darlene?
Yes.
All right, seems like it's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 3. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into a temporary right of entry agreement with the Department of Transportation to enter over a certain portion of 10 North Water Street for construction access, storage of materials, and equipment staging purposes in connection with the project 0301-176 Walk Bridge replacement. Would anybody like to move the item? Thank you, Mr. Livingston. Would anybody like to speak on this particular item?
I can speak on that one, Anthony, if you want.
That's fine.
So probably 2 to 3 years ago, you guys also approved an easement that is under the bridge and behind the aquarium in favor of DOT. That map has to be revised because that area will be changed a little bit. After doing some constructability with the project, they realized that they need a little bit of more construction easement area in order to be able to have more safety while they build the project. And then there will be also a permanent easement due to some of the changes to the project. So that map is being revised and we're gonna be compensated for it accordingly. There's an appraisal going on as well as a map revision. Okay, so that will come back to us probably in few months. Meanwhile, the city would like them to start some of the work in that area that can be done before. And one of the things that we would like them to do is to start doing some of the prep demolition of the IMAX. The IMAX, as you are aware, is supposed to be demolished this year. The city has asked them to see if now, with the opening of the new 4D movie theater in the next couple of weeks, we can really give the IMAX to DOT, and then they can start doing some of that demolition. So meanwhile, during the spring, they can go do some surveys, see if they can need to abate anything. They were okay with our request, but for them to be able to do that, they need a right of entry agreement, since their map now will not be including the area that is needed. So one thing that we told them, that we said we can go give them a temporary right of entry agreement to this area so they can try to expedite some of that work while the map is not ready. So that's why this item is in there. We do not have yet the language for the right of entry agreement. Our legal will then talk to them, and then we'll work on the details about the right of entry agreement, but it will be a temporary right of entry until the easement comes back for approval.
Mr. Livingston?
Yeah, two questions. Has any consideration been given to the loss of parking spots?
Yes, and what we work with them was, Tom, and also this is in agreement with the parking authority. The parking authority preferred that instead of being taken the spaces as an easement, that they were just gonna be compensated once. They prefer to get paid every time that those spaces are being taken. So on the long term, they don't have too many spaces that will be taken, but they may need to block some spaces, for instance, if they need to move the crane in there. If there is some like bad weather forecast that they need to have the boom down, they're gonna use the parking lot for that. So this way, the parking authority will be able to close those spaces. They will have some notification, and then they charge accordingly. It's the same that we do if you're blocking a space in the city. You know, if you need to like put a dumpster and block a space, the parking authority charge for that. So it was agreed in the past that instead of giving an easement and then we lose those spaces for X amount of time and they may not even be using it, we decided that the best for the whole area would be to be on a daily basis as needed.
How long would this be for, time period?
The right of entry or the easement?
The easement?
The easement, it may be permanent easement. It is a permanent easement, but it doesn't, it just changed a little bit the line. I think I haven't seen the revised map, but it changes the line of where that easement was towards more the parking lot because of where the cables are being installed for the bridge.
But going back to the parking, so, you know, there's already a problem with parking on Washington Street. And we're potentially taking away, it looks like 10 or 11 spaces, 12 spaces. For the restaurant owners and the like down there, that's not a good news.
So are you seeing that in our agenda?
Well, I'm looking at the pink on this attachment. I don't know if you can see it.
No.
It's the map. I mean, it says, maybe this isn't new. Maybe this is an old, but it has a whole bunch of spaces blocked out in pink or orange or some sort of.
It, Vanessa? The one
Yeah,
on-
that one.
Yeah, okay, I see now. Yeah, so this is just kind of so they can go and then if they need to store some material in there, this is kind of for the, again, I haven't seen the final map. And what if they need to take portion of those spaces as a part of a permanent easement, that will be appraised to the city.
Yeah, but
some of
I
the
don't think,
construction will
what
be,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just, it's not a matter of money to the city as much as parking for the businesses. And I just wonder if anybody's thought about, where these people can go. Maybe it's not as much of an issue now with COVID and all, but it depends how long this thing goes on. We may not have a choice, but I mean, I think it's something we need to think about.
I think there are also future plans for this whole area, Tom, in general, that the city is thinking about, including even adding a couple of spaces at the street as well. This area probably will go through a major renovation after the whole project is complete. But as of now, they don't have any plans, and I don't know for how long those spaces will be gone. And again, they're going to just be reimbursed to the city.
Okay, I have one more question. Why do we want them to take it down now versus later?
Because we think that now it will be less disruptive to start the work at the IMAX and have some of the demolition done before summer or after summer instead of during summer.
I got to tell you, I don't feel I have enough information on this now, because I don't understand the parking. And I do think, George, I'll throw it to you. I mean, you own a business there. I don't know how you feel about this.
I agree with you, Tom. I would like to know more information on the time frame, because I figured, and correct me if I'm wrong here, my understanding was, Vanessa, once the IMAX came down, they were going to utilize that space so that we wouldn't lose the parking space.
That's what I thought.
And I went even further to pass it on to Mike Harding, who's the chair of the parking authority right now, and get his input on that, because he would know better than I would. Other than being down there and seeing it firsthand, Mike's more responsible on the parking end of it and gets all the data of the usage of those spaces. I would be interested in getting that information though, Vanessa, if once the IMAX comes down, everything transitions to that location and those parking spaces get freed up again.
Again, as of now, they only going to close those spaces as needed, and they just going to have those spaces blocked as they need. That map, and what we need first is a right of entry and not the final map is not in front of you guys. But I'm happy to get back to them. The only thing that I just want to make you aware is that if we do not go through with this right of entry, there is a chance that we're going to have some work on the demolition of the IMAX during the summer month that we were trying to avoid.
I mean, I guess I'm just trying to find more about the timing. I mean, I'm not opposed to this, but I just think that if we're signing up to potentially losing these spots for 5 years or 5 months, I mean, it's a big difference. And I just like to know that. I mean, I don't need it. I mean, I'm willing to move forward with this if we can get the information by the time the council votes on it, but I'm not comfortable not knowing that.
Is that something we could get from them, Vanessa? Can we get a tighter timeline as far as the spaces being used?
Yes, I'll try to get something in writing for you guys.
Thank you.
Tom, can I just ask, is that in reference to the right of entry or the future permanent easement?
Well, I'm looking at this again, this map, if you will, and I see these parking spots, covered, and it looks like there's 12 or more of them covered. And I need to understand, I mean, if I'm not reading it right, tell me. But if I am reading it, it looks like we potentially could lose up to 12 spots for some extended period of time that I don't know. And I want to know, I understand it's only as needed, but you can assume that at least some of them will be needed. I guarantee it. And again, I would like to know whether it's 5 months or 5 years, because we know the project's going to go on for a long time. And if it's going to be for 5 years, what's our plan?
So the right of entry will be temporary and will be until the final map is finalized. You see, this shows as a preliminary map. So we are not approving that map yet. We're just approving a right of entry to the area. What they're going to do is just some construction staging. That's what they are asking for now as part of the right of entry.
So
in regards to the parking spaces, The latest that I heard it is that they will be taking on a daily basis as needed. The goal is not to really close the parking lot, but I'll ask them to put that in writing back to you.
And again, the time frame. So Vanessa, just to be clear, the right of entry is going to cover the parking spaces, not the easement. Is that what you're saying?
No, the right of entry is pretty much just like a temporary, let's say.
I think I understand your question. Vanessa, is the pink shaded area the area which corresponds with the requested right of entry?
I think that it will be for both. They need to be able to have access to that. So if they need to move any equipment there, they'll be able to until the map is not finalized. After they have an easement is a different thing. They don't need to ask for permission. Now, if they need to move a crane to be able to access that, they cannot do any work until that map is not finalized. So that's why the map may, again, this is a preliminary map. So I would assume that both would be similar. The right of entry and the permanent easement or construction easement, whatever that will be, the map will be very similar. They are just trying to gain access through our property.
Okay.
Super time sensitive. And like, should we be talking about maybe tabling this to the next meeting, or, you know, like Tom said, just get the information for us before the vote, which is just a week away?
Vanessa?
I can get back to them tomorrow and see if I can get you guys an answer and let you know, ask them to clarify about the parking spaces for the right of entry.
So Vanessa, to Barbara's point and to Tom's point with that, if we get that information and we still have questions, are we saying that we're going to take it to the next council meeting, or should we just say we want that information and wait until the next meeting to discuss it? Is that possible or no? Is this time sensitive?
I'll leave up to you guys to decide, but I just want to let you know that we were the ones that approached the state to see if they would be willing to start doing some work at the IMAX. So we don't have people working there during the summer month. The main goal is, we know that hopefully we'll be out of COVID by the summer month, and we know that the aquarium will be just finished a major renovation. The restaurants will be willing to have all the customers back. And one of the things that we don't want is to have a major demolition happening in that area. So when we approached them, was the city with the aquarium, we asked them, is there something that you can do to anticipate your schedule? And they said, we'll look into it, one thing, but we don't have the easements to be able to do it. But we can get a right of entry, so it will allow us to start doing some work. If we get this approved by next week, they probably can get the week after someone on site to start doing some inspections, see if they have any asbestos. I believe one of the main things that we need to do is to do some abatement before they really start the demolition of it. But the state can only work after all the paperwork is in place. They cannot start doing any work if they don't have their base covered. That's why the option was to do a right of entry. And again, although it's showing those space blocked, it may be blocked just for when they need some to use it. And I understand the question, Tom. I cannot answer if now for how many days those spaces will be blocked. The idea is that they were not going to block it for that many, because there is also a daily cost associated to it. It's not that they're going to be able to just go there and totally block those spaces. The main thing is more access to it. As you are aware, what they're going to do when they build the bridge, also, there will be a whole platform that will be built along the river. That's how they're going to do the construction. And the docks is one of the first things that they're going to do, and those will be also change and move south into the river. So one of the reasons why they need access to that is to be able to do those changes before they really start any work.
David, I saw your hand up. Did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vanessa, you mentioned about the not knowing precisely where these permanent easements would be as of yet. Are we looking at that same area in pink that would
Yes, it's probably
eventually?
the same one. I think that they are calling just preliminary because I think that they have just to finalize with the surveyor and make sure that that's what it is. But it's not, it's just showing as a construction easement. And there may be a permanent easement up to the parking lot. As of now, I don't think that they are taking any of the parking lot.
That was my question. Is the permanent easement going to impact that parking lot?
Not that I'm aware.
Okay.
At least I haven't seen a map that shows any taking from the parking lot yet. But sometimes I don't see things until the end. But
Okay.
as of now, from what I know, the parking lot would still will not going to be affected. There will be a new configuration with the new docks and all that, but they were really not planning to take the lot.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, to Vanessa's point, and I can attest because I'm down there, if we're doing this to hurry up the demolition and free up that space where the IMAX is for utilizing that location for the future construction and not taking away parking spaces during the summer, that does make sense to me because right now, especially with COVID being what it is, we're not that busy downtown. I don't see that parking lot ever full. Now would be the ideal time to do it, with the understanding and hope that maybe by summer there and the vaccine kicking in, maybe more people will be out, and that tends to be the more trafficked, busy time of year for that area. So if we can free that space up and get ahead of the project and maybe have more access during the summer where hopefully we will have more traffic, that might be a good idea and a good way to go. That being said, there are a lot of concerns and there are some questions here. I have no problem tabling it to the next committee meeting, or we could pass it forth to the common council, to the full council, hope to get more of these answers before we get there. And if we don't, and we're not satisfied with it, we can always table it then also.
Yeah, George, I think that makes a lot of sense. I agree with you. I think this is a good move on the city's part. I just, from my perspective, I just want to know what we're approving, and so
Right.
at least we thought it through. So I'm okay with personally going ahead next week, and we can always table it there, like you said.
Right.
So just for me to understand, I'm gonna reach out to them yesterday and I'm gonna ask them to clarify about the parking spaces, right? If they're gonna be taking now as the right of entry and for how long, and then eventually later with the easement. But again, the easement you guys are not approving now, but I'll see if during the right of entry, how many spaces will be affected and for how long. Is that the question?
Yes.
Anything else? Anyone? All right. Yeah, Vanessa, if we could get those answers, preferably before the council meeting next week, that'd be great.
Yeah. I'll send to all of you as soon as I have the answer.
Okay. So then I guess I'll put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thanks again for the explanation, everyone. And Vanessa, if you could get us that information sooner than later, that'd be great. Item number 4, authorize the Chief of Operations and Public Works to execute orders on contracts with Deering Construction, Inc. to project PM 2019-1 pavement management program for an amount not to exceed $500,000. Accounts noted. Anthony, I believe this is the location we're talking about is on the Cove Street 1st, 2nd, 3rd area.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The reason for this request and for this item is during construction of our annual paving for this year, we did encounter, we being DPW, encountered unforeseen conditions within the roadway in the Cove through Fifth Street area, excluding 2nd Street because we have not finished that street yet. And the unforeseen conditions that we're referring to is that the road slopes were relatively extremely flat. And again, this required extra regrading from Deering Construction to achieve the proper pitch on the road, to improve the drainage, right? We want to reduce or mitigate any ponding or standing water. There were numerous storm sewers that we discovered that were in serious disrepair, which were replaced by Deering Construction on a time and materials basis. Now, as the committee may recall, just recently, we approved a month or two ago, the committee approved and the council approved a on-call general drainage contract that we now have a contractor retained for that will do that work next year in advance of the paving. Again, we're still working to optimize and make our processes more efficient. But the relatively flat road grades out there required, again, additional grading. The storm sewer and additional ADA handicap ramps were installed. And that really, in that whole area, it wasn't any one street in particular. It was a multitude of things. In the future, to help mitigate this, we have also the on-call surveying contractor, professional services contractor, excuse me, in advance of our paving program. If there's areas that we feel need to be surveyed because they're relatively flat, or if we suspect that there might be some drainage issues ahead of time, that work would be completed in advance to avoid contractor change orders during construction. Unfortunately, at the time, we didn't have the on-call surveying contract yet in place, and we also didn't have the on-call general drainage contract in place. Again, those are mechanisms to help improve our overall pavement program. So the theory is now in the future, and the intent is to fix the drainage before, survey the area, give the survey back to engineering, we review it, we look at it, and then we determine if any of these field adjustments need to be made prior to actually the construction. So that avoids a contractor. See, in the past, and the municipalities where I've worked too, you typically don't survey for your pavement program. You typically don't. Most of the sidewalks and the curb and the road, they're going back to the elevations and the locations that they were before. So there's no reason to do a full survey of a large area. That could be very costly. But the issue here is that some of the grades did change, and again, that was unforeseen. We didn't see that coming. But again, we will try in the future now to mitigate these change orders by having the work, the design, and the survey done in advance. So then instead of working it out in the field, which is typical, very common, done all the time, it would be done upfront. It doesn't eliminate change orders, but it'll certainly reduce the number of change orders. And also too, just to note, this paving contract is up, meaning that we will be rebidding our pavement management program contract this summer. So Deering may or may not get it. He may not bid. I don't know. That's up to them, to be honest. But we are rebidding that contract this year.
Any questions?
If I might add, Chief, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that we did pave a lot of other streets. We wanted to pave as much as possible before the close of the year. And for all the reasons that Chief just mentioned, that we didn't anticipate how much we may have been expending late in the contract. A lot of our expenditures were also on roads that were paved. So it wasn't like we went over budget in one location, $500,000. It's just that we did more work than what we were than what we anticipated we were actually accomplishing. We were ahead of what our spending availability was before we realized how much we might go over on those change orders and changes in grade, and realization that we couldn't just stop and not fix the grades before winter. Otherwise the plows or pedestrians were going to have difficulty managing the new ADA ramps and everything else that we had installed there.
Yeah, just first off, the roads look great. I guess my question is, you know, we always talk about the annual budget for paving. Does this come out of that amount? I mean, that's why I'm wondering what the source of these funds are. And if it's part of the annual budget, why do we need to approve it?
The paving, so the paving funding, and Vanessa, feel free to jump in. The paving is paid for out of two separate items typically. Annual paving program, right? The paving budget, and also curbs and sidewalks. We basically lump that money together, because when we don't, again, we typically do not pave roads unless we do the curbs and sidewalks first. In a perfect scenario, in a perfect world, obviously there's exceptions to that. But Tom, to answer your question, the pool of money is generally combined between curbs and sidewalks and paving.
And drainage.
And drainage, excuse me, because they're
But
all,
also, Tom, there is another thing also that it's a little complicated. So we bid our paving managed program on a calendar year, and we fund it on a fiscal year. Okay, so this way give us a little bit of flexibility on money because we're able to use money from kind of 2 fiscal years. That's why you're seeing both accounts in there. So, but we usually, we prepare our bid in January, we put it out, and then we have the contract on board by the beginning of the construction year, and then we run through December. Sometimes if we are not able to do everything that we were supposed to, we ended up extending a little bit during the spring. But usually the bid is by calendar year, and then
Right.
the funding is by fiscal year. So that's why we have funding in the account, because we usually have a little bit money from the, let's
previous.
say, from the previous year or the coming year. And that's why you're seeing there. So in other words, just to give you an idea, this original agreement for this year was 3.75, and we're asking for this 500 on change order, so bring us to 4.25, and usually we are around 4 on paving.
All right, so where does the money, extra 500 come from then?
Well, the money.
Well, some of
this is
that might
just
actually come-
paving money,
sorry.
but we also have other accounts that we feed on, because as we said, we have the drainage account where we pull some of that money in.
So you're just-
When we do the approval, that's
harvested
why it's a
various
long
accounts.
list.
Sorry, Tom.
You've harvested money from various accounts.
Correct.
Yeah.
But for the I'm sorry, for the 500,000, we're just pulling from the paving.
Paving, correct. The
Accounts.
C
So
0021.
The budget is available. The money is available. We just don't have it authorized to the contract. So we just
Right.
need to draw a
Gotcha.
little bit more
That's
from
all.
our
That's my
existing
question. Thank you.
pool.
Sorry to belabor it. I just want to understand it.
Any other questions? Okay. All in favor? Ms. Young? Darlene?
I'm sorry, aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Item number 5, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement between the city of Norwalk and Ty and Bond, Inc. for project DPW 2020-1 Construction Inspection Observation Services. The agreement is for a period of 1 year, billable on an hourly basis for a sum not to exceed $325,000, with an option to extend for 2 years, additional term of 1 year each. Accounts noted. Okay, that was a lot of information. So, Anthony, you're up.
Yes, I'll,
That did go out to RFQ, correct?
yes, it did.
Ties and bond for many projects in the past.
We're very comfortable with Ty and Bond, and you'll notice too with the backup that Ty and Bond was not the cheapest consultant. They were not the most expensive either, but what we've encountered, but the selection panel encountered that the most expensive consultants either were more obviously more expensive, and or they did not have the requisite number of years of experience. So meaning that if Ty and Bond, they have experienced inspectors on their staff with 10, 15, 20 years experience, some of the other consultants that might have been less expensive or less costly, they had proposed inspectors that had 4, 6 years. And again, in a few moments, Vanessa and Drew could speak a little bit more on that, or Paul from the panel. But there was kind of the happy medium and the balance that, yes, we've worked with Ty and Bond in the past before. Yes, they're very familiar with our pavement program, but comparatively, based on qualifications, their experience was most prudent, and their experience was most beneficial to the city. So again, they fell somewhere in the middle, which is, again, with professional services, sometimes cheaper is not always better. And that's part of the whole public bid process too, that I have contentions with, that, lowest bidder, sometimes, it's not always the best thing. With the professional services, we have flexibility, and we're very comfortable with Ty and Bond. And just to give a little bit of overview, this contract, this professional services contract, is for the oversight of our annual paving program. So they physically watch the contractor install the paving. Obviously, DPW engineering is there too, but a lot of times the inspectors are bouncing between jobs, and even more so now with us being short-staffed. And also too, we basically have another staff member from Ty and Bond who will be a rover. and basically bounce to various capital improvements projects that are going on within the city. Anything from drainage, athletic fields. I know Recreation and Parks has several projects lined up for next year, tentatively. So we'll have one person dedicated full-time to the oversight of the paving, and kind of a half a person that will manage and oversee other various projects to assist engineering throughout the year. So you'll notice last year's contract was a little over $200,000. The reason why we increased the fee from a little over 200 to 325 is for that extra half a person, for that extra coverage. Again, this is a 3-year contract. It's a 1-year contract with 2 options to renew. We likely will do that. Vanessa and Drew, if I missed anything, please feel free to add in, but we're very confident and happy with Ty and Bond, and they really had the best inspectors in that proposal.
When we actually interviewed the people that were going to be doing the work, we had requested that the actual inspectors that they would assign to the project attend the interview, so we were able to question them too, and that is where we were able to decipher some of the experience that Anthony just mentioned too. Some of the cheaper ones, as he mentioned, only had 4 and 6 years experience, and the senior personnel were coaching them to answer the questions we were asking them. So we would end up having to spend quite a bit of time bringing them up to speed. So cheaper in this case would end up costing the city probably more.
Any questions?
You want a motion?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
I think
Thank you,
we
Tom.
forgot one last time, by the way. The last
Can I
item.
skip it? Last one?
Yeah.
Getting ahead of myself. All right, so Monique, you noticed Tom moved those items.
Yep.
So any other questions? All right, so seeing none, I'll put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 6, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with Clean Harbor Environmental Services, Inc. for Project 4079 Household Hazardous Waste Collection for a sum not to exceed $30,000, account noted. Would anybody like to move the item? Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Who would like to speak on this? I know we had a comment during public participation. That
Mr. Chairman, I'll give a brief overview, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Palladino to address the comments from the beginning for the public participation. So this contract includes 7 southwestern Fairfield County communities. I wrote them down so I don't forget any of them, but the Darien, Greenwich, New Canaan, Norwalk, Stamford, Westport, and Wilton. Annually, we hold an event to collect household hazardous waste. In 2021, that event will be held on August 28th from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Norwalk High School. This information is on the website and also in the packets too for the supporting documentation. And the purpose of this event, again, we say household hazardous waste. That's materials like solvents, degreasers, transmission fluids, lighter fluids, oil and latex paints. We have a what's in and what's out list. And also too, and Jessica could speak a little bit more about this. The vendor that we're using is very reputable. They have a lot of history in the surrounding communities. We're satisfied and very comfortable with awarding the contract to them. And there will be staff present at the facility to identify. I know that Ms. Lorchell had concerns about the paint care, and Jessica could speak to that a little bit more in a moment. But there will be staff there to identify what falls under the paint care and what's acceptable under the paint care versus what's not acceptable under the paint care. Jessica, can you address Ms. Lorchell's concerns and then just give a little overview about what paint care is and how it works?
Yes, Chief. So Paint Care is a program in Connecticut that accepts certain paint products as a product stewardship program. So those products are accepted back to Paint Care and paid for Paint Care for their disposal or recycle. So the price you see per household that the city of Norwalk would be paying for household hazardous waste would not include any Paint Care approved products. So those products would be paid for directly by Paint Care. The contractor, Clean Harbors, will have to execute a separate contract with Paint Care in order to be paid for those items.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So in the past, the city of Norwalk and the surrounding communities have not participated with Paint Care. Due to COVID, only one event happened in 2020, And from what I understood, the staff was able to identify based on the markings of the containers, whether it was a paint care product or not a paint care product. Any item that comes in from a resident that does not have proper markings would be assumed to be household hazardous waste. Even if it is standard latex paint, there's no way to identify it without doing chemical tests. So unfortunately, it would have to be paid for as household hazardous waste. That's why we ask residents to bring their items in their original container.
Any questions?
Well, to Ms. Loricella's point, how will this be advertised?
So in the past, what we've done is we've put it in the newspaper, we've put it out to different broadcast programs like Channel 12 and The Hour and Nancy on Norwalk. If residents have a suggestion on how to further announce the program, I'm happy to hear them and happy to put the word out any way we can.
Well, we'll also include too, Tom, we'll include the website. We'll have the communications manager, Josh Morgan, put out a press release as well. If there's any other outlets that anyone suggests, I mean, we're more than amenable and open to including that, but there's only so much bandwidth that, other than what Jessica listed and what I added to it, if there's anything else, we're more than.
No, yeah, I understand. I just wanted to address Ms. Loricella's question.
Understood.
I do think there's some creative ways that we can get those things out, like the second taxing district, for instance, and their mailers could possibly, if you could get copies to them, they could insert them in their mailers, so at least they get out to the homes. There are some other ways, even the school system, somehow getting something out to the kids, although they're not in school now, but.
Right. No, we could certainly send them
I mean,
to the taxing districts. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Even if they just post it on their email.
Right.
Or, sorry, their
Right.
website. Just
Right.
Right.
Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions? I'll put it to a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Item number 7, authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with City Carting, Inc. for project 4077, transportation and disposal of yard waste material for a sum not to exceed $275,000. Account noted. Would anybody like to move the item? Thank you, Manny. Mr. Langella moved the item. Who wants to speak on this briefly? Anthony?
I could kick it off, and Jessica, if I omit anything, please feel free to jump in. So this contract is a 3-year contract with 2 1-year extensions. You'll notice that actually this is going to be a 5.5-year contract where the contract's for the second half of this fiscal year plus 3 years. So it's actually for 21, half of 21, the fiscal year 22, 23, 24. So that's the 3.5. And then there's two optional 1-year extensions. This contract is for the collection of yard waste materials, which include brush, leaves, logs and stumps, wood chips, and storm/disaster debris, which is a very important item, as we noted from the August 4th storm event. City carting was less in cost. And I have to say, and again, Chris and Jessica know, Chris Torrey and Jessica Palladino could agree that during the August 4th tropical storm, City Carting was extremely responsive, and we had anywhere from 10 to 12 trailers coming in and out of our operations center and yard waste site, just trying to keep up with removing the organics and the yard waste and the storm debris as fast as they can. And I have to say that most of those trucks were City Carting trucks. The vendor now that has the contract, DW, has done a good job, but they unfortunately were limited in their availability for trucking during that storm event. So City Carting, as you know, handles our waste stream for garbage and recycling, but they were clearly the lower bidder, and they were extremely responsive during the storm events. And that's when you really need a vendor to step up when you're in a pinch like that. And I mean, Jessica, most of those trucks, at least 3/4 of them were City Carting trucks that were coming in and out of the facility, correct?
Correct, Chief.
So, I mean, that to me speaks volumes, and that to me gives me comfort, and should give the council and the residents comfort that when there's another storm like that, because it will happen, that at least we know we could pick up the phone or email or meet on site, explain what we need, and not have to worry about the disposal because we're already dealing with enough during the storm events, just during the collection. So that's just a background about that item. And this, Jessica, this contract was separated out from item number 8, right? Which is the street sweepings and the catch basin. This was all one contract in the past, correct?
Correct. In the past, it's been issued as 2 RFPs, but in the past, it was awarded to one contractor. So there was one contract.
Right.
But with these 2 separate RFPs, they're being issued to 2 separate contractors. So there will be 2 separate contracts.
So city carting will, if approved, would take over the contract that DW currently has. And if you look at item number 8, DW Transport and Leasing, they're the current contractor for both of these items, for both 7 and 8, but they're only going to be contracting with the city for just item 8 this go around, if approved, if recommended by committee and approved by council.
Any questions? Well, I just want to say, city carting did come through on the last storm, and we had a lot of debris that showed up very quickly with the cleanup, not just from our trucks out there picking it up, but also homeowners. And we were lucky enough to be able to keep the compost site open so they can dispose of it all. So personally, I feel that they did a great job and they came through in a bind. It's good to see them taking this contract as far as I'm concerned. If there's no other questions, I'll put it to a vote. All in favor? Ms. Young? Ms. Young? Darlene? I can't hear or see Ms. Young, so put it forth with everybody and Ms. Young abstaining. Passes. Does that work, Tom? Livingston?
Yeah, why not? I mean, you haven't heard from her, so.
Yeah, I'm just going to pass it, and Ms. Young has an abstention. All right, item number 8. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute an agreement with DW Transport and Leasing, Inc. for Project 4078, transportation and disposal of street sweepings, catch basins, grit, excavating material, and broken structural concrete for a sum not to exceed $150,000 in account noted. So,
Yes.
like to move the item. Thank you, Manny, for moving the item. Anthony, I mean, I guess we pretty much heard the explanation, and if you want to tell us a little bit more, it's exactly the same.
Sure.
thing.
There was one bidder for this contract. In the previous item that was just moved and approved, there was 2 bidders. For this contract, there was 1 bidder, DW. And again, the scope of this work includes removal of street sweepings from our street sweepers, catch basin, grit, and all the material taken out of the catch basin, excavated material, that could be silt and sediment excavated, let's say a waterway project, and broken structural concrete without rebar. So those are the items that are typically covered within this contract. And again, it allows DPW, when we're self-performing our own work, whether it's operations or if we have an engineering contract, let's say with Priority Landscaping, who's doing the dredging of those 5 waterways, it allows us flexibility where the contractor only has to bring that material to our transfer station. We get it at a better price. They're not charging us their disposal cost. So it helps reduce some of the costs in the capital projects. So it works both from an operational standpoint and also from a capital perspective. These are 2 very important contracts to have for public works.
Yeah. Any questions? All right. All in favor? Ms. Young?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, great. It's unanimous.
Hey, Mr. Chair, maybe you can ask Ms. Young if she voted on the last item.
Ms. Young, how did you vote on item number 7?
I'm sorry, and I couldn't see. Yes, aye.
All right, Monique, can you adjust that, please? I'll take that as a yes, too. Oh, good old Zoom. All right, so moving on, that's the end of new business, and on to information and discussion. Item A, discussion. Number 1, project status on the sediment removal contract update.
Okay, so the 4 out of the 5 waterways have been cleaned and removed the sediment, which was Hunters, June, Lloyd, and Friendly. And the fifth location, the last, will be Killy. Also will be by West Cedar. It will be the most challenging location. But next month, what we will be providing to the committee is a total volume of sediment removed from the 5 waterways. I'm curious to see how much sediment, and Drew, I'm not sure if you know to date roughly how many tons or cubic yards of sediment has been removed from the 4 waterways that we completed.
Sorry, I know I did give the tally to some folks and I don't have it at my fingertips, but I'll try and
Okay,
get it
that's
before
fine.
we
Well,
adjourn.
next month,
Find it.
once this 5th location is started or more than halfway done, we'll just provide the committee with a general sense idea of how many tons and volume has been removed. So the projects have gone seamless, a few little hiccups here and there, but the residents have been very happy. We've received very little to no complaints about the disturbance and the impact with construction, and everybody seems to be happy in the surrounding areas. So, and of course, we haven't seen any more flooding, fortunately. So we believe that this will have a positive impact on the overall storm sewer. Now, again, like I've said to some residents, these are more maintenance items. They're not looked at as a simple fix or a silver bullet to flooding, but cumulatively, the cumulative effect of cleaning out the waterways will be a great improvement to the overall storm sewer system. So there still will be flooding, there still will be ponding, but nonetheless, it will help move the water faster from point A to point B. So it's going very well.
It's great. Item B, Dreamy Hollow drainage system improvement update.
Sure. Woodard and Curran is continuing with their design documents. They recently employed a geotechnical contractor to work with 3 residents on private property to obtain soil borings so we could better understand the characterization of the soil below. Why this is important is because that area, the Friendly Pond area, is built on a very organic, mucky peat, not really the best soil that could be available for construction, meaning things settle, things sink, things don't drain properly. So to ensure that we don't run into any issues during construction, Woodland and Curran is doing their due diligence to find out what type of soil conditions are below the surface so they can most appropriately design their storm sewers. Meaning that instead of just throwing the pipe in the ground, if the soil is very unstable or weak, there might need to be some special support below the pipe, whether that's extra stone, whether that's piles. Piles are basically long corkscrews driven into the ground that provide support to hold up a pipe. So there's multiple reasons why you perform the soil borings, but the residents have been very cooperative. We're obtaining the entry agreements. Vanessa, do you know if we've received all 3 of them yet to start investigating on their properties?
I delivered those 2 weeks ago and met with the residents, and we are waiting for them to return the executed documents, and they have not as of yet. I was going to give them till after the holidays, but probably tomorrow or the next day, I'll track the residents down and just ask them if they've executed them.
I mean, the worst case is, and like I've said to Woodland and Curran, because they asked us, the worst case is the residents don't let us on their property. Woodland and Curran designs conservatively, which may be a little bit more expensive for the construction. I'd rather them design conservative than under design and have more field changes during construction and the contractor put his hands up, say, what do I do now? So there's checks and balances there. Hopefully they say yes. Even if we get one of the 3, that's better than 0. But stay tuned on that. And we do anticipate contractor bidding in summer 2021 and are looking forward to a shovel in the ground by late summer, early fall of 2021. Now that project may not start again to the fall. Even if they work from September to December, that's fine. It would resume back again in the spring of 2022. So again, this is the Friendly Pond, Dreamy Hollow Estates area. I think it's a 400-acre drainage area. The focus is to start the improvements there and then begin the second flood study. Well, they've already started the second flood study, but have really been focusing on this flood study. The second flood study is the new Canaan-Ponus Avenue watershed, which is again about 400 acres. So once they get rolling with the construction here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to finish the flood study. We're going to evaluate it. They're going to go into design and pretty much follow the same schedule so that there'd be a shovel-ready project by the next fall of 2022 for whatever improvements identified in the new Canaan-Ponus Avenue area. And then after that, we'll work with Woodard and Curran or whoever else that's retained for the work to start looking at other areas within the city and identify basically 2 at a time, because we can't take on 5 400-acre drainage studies, because the capital improvement program wouldn't even allow for that. But our thought is for every 2 years, you do the design and the investigation 1 year, and the construction the second year. So every drainage area would take basically 2 years to complete, and that at least slows down the spending and allows the capital improvement program to fund what we need to do, because these aren't small fixes. They're not, $500,000. These are multi-million-dollar fixes each time, and you're not even solving all the problem. So we're confident that once we finish Friendly Pond, see good results there, we'll start identifying other big areas within the city too.
Thanks, Anthony. It is a very big project, so it's coming along though. Thank you.
Very welcome.
B, monthly solid waste report, November 2020.
Okay, not much to report here, other than that compared to the same time last year, the recycling numbers are up, which is good. And as expected, the MSW numbers are also up, likely due to COVID, likely due to people being home. But this particular time period between November and December, and even part of January, you have the holidays. You have people more so even home now with the uptick in numbers. So we do expect over the next few months, the numbers this month have been a little bit lower from the initial onset of COVID-19, but now they're starting to creep back up again because of the later year, because of the holidays, and because of the increase in numbers. So compared to last year, we're much higher, but compared to the beginning of the pandemic, we're trending a little bit lower.
Okay. All right, well, that was kind of expected with the current situation. C, snow removal.
All right. So I just wanted to give a kudos to Chris Torrey and operations for the snow removal cleanup, and Nick Roberts with Parks for the 12/16 to 12/18 snowstorm. I just wanted to give the committee just a few statistics. So between 12/16, the night of 12/16 to the afternoon of 12/18, we received 8 to 10 inches of snow. We did use about 450 tons of salt. We projected we'd use about 500 to 750. So our projections were pretty good. We have over 5,000 tons of salt left in the shed, so don't worry if there's any issues or any snowstorms. We have plenty of salt. We don't have to even think about ordering it for a few months, and they're always well stocked in the shed. So nothing to worry about there. We spent about $50,000 in overtime, and again, that was from Wednesday night at about 5:30 p.m. to about Thursday night at 6:30 when the truck started coming in, and then early Friday morning, there was a sidewalk crew there for Parks. But again, this overtime number is just operations, but it was about $50,000 for an 8 to 10 inch storm. So total operational period, or hours, I would say, is about 32 hours. Again, that was Wednesday night to Thursday night, and then coming back again Friday morning to do sidewalks. Sidewalks happened last, sidewalks happened at the end. Parks did a little bit of cleanup during the middle of the storm for the sidewalks just to keep up with it. But operations and Parks did work collaboratively to help remove a lot of the sidewalks and clean up a lot of the sidewalks in the schools, City Hall, and even the right of way. So I was very impressed to see that. And again, that's a testament to the reorg. It definitely helps having the shared resources, although both sides of the fence were a little bit short-staffed this year because of the retirements. They made it work. Of course, we had a few complaints about plowing people in. We had a few complaints about not coming down the road. But the way I've explained to a lot of the residents is that, that first pass that you see might not be the prettiest, but it's just to make the road safe and passable for emergency vehicles. So it's not going to be black to the pavement all the time, especially based on the snowfall and the temperatures. But that first pass is just to allow a fire truck, an ambulance, or a police vehicle, or ourselves to get through the roadway. Of course, the operation could always be improved a bit, but once you start hitting that threshold of 8 to 10 inches, 12 inches of snow, it gets hard you don't know where to put the snow. The space becomes a challenge. We received some complaints too about people pushing, the plow drivers pushing snow from one driveway to the next. Again, we're trying to move the snow along the curb line and out to the intersections, but not always a possible task, especially when this car is parked in the way. But we're doing our best. And if there are any complaints, please feel free. After the storm, post-storm, it helps us debrief and helps operations improve some of the ways that we do business with the snow removal, which again I think is fantastic. White Plains did a fantastic job, but Norwalk, they definitely have a leg up on them. So you have a very good crew out there at night when you see those whoopee yellow lights. So no worries. We'll always get you out of the driveway. There was a couple complaints too about people felt that we were pushing snow from one area to the other. But what we did is on a couple occasions, we had to get some people out with special needs. We had seniors with special needs who actually were feeling sick. We had to get them out of the driveway. So we did send crews back to push the snow up, but unfortunately went to somebody else's driveway and then we ended up moving it anyway. But if you hear some of those things, that is what's happening. There's no easy clear-cut answer for it. It's just when there's 10 inches of snow, it gets difficult to place the snow in certain locations. And we are sensitive to the people with special needs. So if they do call PD dispatch, PD lets us know, and then we do send a crew out there.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm just going to say you guys did do a great job. I toured it with Chris during the storm and after the storm, just because I did get a lot of phone calls, and just to share with the other council members. Most of the time when I get phone calls, I tell everybody I'll take a call from a constituent or anybody for that matter that has problems with the snow. But the best thing to do is call the city customer service number, because that way a work order is put together, it's in the computer, and it will get done, and it helps the city track it also, as you guys know. But when I was out there with Chris, and 8 to 10 inches is a lot of snow. I know I had a hard time cleaning my own driveway because you got to watch where you're putting the snow and how you're going to clean it. And then you go to some of these tighter neighborhoods where there's not a real good space to push any of the snow. And they have plow drivers come out, private plow drivers come out, plow the driveways, and then tend to put the snow back in the road, even though they're not supposed to, but no, there's no one out there policing them. That's what they do, and it tends to fill up the roads and make them even worse. I actually got a couple of pictures if anybody wants to see what I'm talking about. And then people feel like the roads weren't completely cleared by Public Works, or not even cleared at all by Public Works, but that wasn't the case. The case in many of those problems was the private plow trucks going out there and pushing the snow into the road again after it's been cleared. So that being said, obviously there's always room for a little bit of improvement, but given the situation, personally, I wouldn't want to be a plow driver out there because it looks very difficult to do, especially on those tight roads. And I think they did good with what they did really well with what was given to them. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add to that, or I'll just keep moving on. All right. So D, personnel.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, just to go back to, thank you to staff to text me the information, but back to the sediment removal. So to date, for 3 of the 5 locations, we did remove approximately 1,400 tons of sediment. And to give you a reference point, during the August 4th storm, we collected about 2,600 tons of storm debris. So just to put that in context, we've removed about half of the volume or the weight of tonnage that we did for the tropical storm with the storm debris, as we just did for the sediment removal. So 1,400 tons of sediment removal versus the 2,600 tons of storm debris. I know it's different material. You can get into the densities and engineering of it, but a ton is a ton, and a ton is 2,000 pounds. So at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. But just to give you some context, 1,400 tons of sediment and silt is a lot. And that's 1,400 tons less that'll help improve hydraulics of the waterways. So thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
Okay, and back to personnel,
And
Mr.
Jessica.
Chairman. Sorry, and Jessica too. I'm sorry. Back to personnel. So following the retirement vacancies, personnel did a fantastic job working with operations and parks. We have successfully filled through various offer letters and promotions and daisy chains, which is the promotion when somebody vacates a position, one person moves up to one, the other person moves up from the bottom. So that's what I mean by daisy chain. Operations did fill 11 labor positions and 2 driver positions. That's fantastic. So yes, we'll have 13 new people to train, but at least we have the 13 people, which we're very grateful for, because that could have went a different way. And Parks also filled all 5 of their positions that resulted from the vacancies, which include 1 equipment operator, 3 drivers, and 1 laborer. And again, some staff transferred over from operations to Parks, and then other staffs were promoted internally within Parks. So our personnel movements and roster changes are basically finished for operations and Parks. It was a heavy lift. There was a lot of coordination, a lot of different scenarios that could happen if certain people took certain jobs, but it shook out the way we wanted it. So I do thank personnel and Ray Burney and Chris and Nick for working through that. And as far as engineering, We have not filled our junior engineer positions yet, but again, we're confident since we have the on-call surveying contract in place. We are advertising right now for an on-call engineering contract, and we have the construction observation contract. We're confident, although short-staffed, we are confident that we could bridge that gap to hold off on filling the junior engineers like we discussed with the administration for a few months. Is that right, Vanessa?
Sorry, I lose my mouse sometimes. Yes, that's correct.
So Anthony, how many open
Like
positions do you
advertising
have?
some of our positions.
I'm sorry. Vanessa, I'm sorry, I cut you off, I think.
No, go ahead, Tom.
How many open positions you have now?
5.
In engineering. Yes.
5 open engineering positions? Wow.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow, it's amazing you can do what you do.
We have
Thank you.
good staff. We have excellent. I'm fortunate to have excellent staff, and you really do truly have a department. Like, and I've said this before, they really do care, and probably one of the most committed, dedicated groups of professionals that I've seen. Everybody from the operations staff to, I mean, when you step back and take a look at it, when everyone's running crazy during a storm event or an emergency event, you know how cool and collected they are for the most part, even with fatigue and being tired, and even engineering running around like chickens with the head cut off to make sure the bid gets out, working with purchasing. I mean, there's a lot of little steps and intricacies behind the scenes that at the end of the day, we make it look polished, but that's really a testament to the great work that Paul, Drew, Jessica, Vanessa, everybody that's on the call that supports this department and me, and ultimately the mayor and the council. I mean, there's second to none. So if you didn't have the talent level in the department, probably not as much would get done. There's no question about it. And what I like is that we take a step back. We admit when we have processes that aren't as efficient as they can be, you know, like adding the surveying now, adding the drainage contract, there's things that we could always improve on that I brought over from my previous experiences that Vanessa, Paul, and Drew always wanted to do that. Maybe they didn't have the opportunity to do it. So now we have the right pieces in place, and yeah, no, it's difficult and it's definitely stressful at times, but they make it look easy. So
Kudos to you guys.
thank you, Tom, and thank you to the staff.
Awesome job, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you. And shout out to our supporting staff as well. You know, we got junior and assistant engineers that have been putting in a lot of tough work. So thank you for the acknowledgement.
We've
No,
said it
absolutely.
before and we'll say it publicly too. One of the biggest people that's the glue that keeps everything together in our department. is
Monique.
too.
Monique.
Monique keeps everything going. Without
Yes.
her, we'd be
You
lost.
beat me to it, Paul. Monique, thank you.
Let me tell you something. Monique gets my back and protects me and always gives me a heads up. I don't even have to ask her for anything, because before it's even a thought in my mind, she's already proactively done it and supports me in ways that it's an understatement to even explain it over
Yeah.
Zoom. But she definitely gets my back. Awesome to work with. Thinks outside the box and will put in whatever effort she needs to do. So I know she has a lot to balance, as we all do, but thank you, Monique. I'm sure you can hear me, but if you can't,
Thank you very much.
you're certainly welcome. And you're a big part to the department too. So I'm fortunate to have the admin and the technical staff that I have and the operational staff. Couldn't do it without you.
All right. Well, seems like we've come to the end. Would anybody like to make a motion? Motion to adjourn? I'll make it. All right. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Yes.
Good night.
Happy New Year.
Happy New
Stay safe.
Year. Happy New
Happy New
Year.